April the 11th, 1971 was a special day. It was Easter Sunday. And that was also the day Jack Nicklaus won the US Masters Golf Championship. But that's not what I remember most about that particular day. April the 11th, 1971 was the day my dad died. Although that was many years ago, I still think of my dad every Easter Sunday. My mom was born on June the 3rd, and I always think of my mom that day because 75 years later, she died on her birthday. Mother's Day is another opportunity to reflect on my mom, and Christmas, and September the 18th, which was Carolyn and my wedding anniversary, and well, the list goes on and on, doesn't it? While my grief for those special people in my life has eased over the years, I find myself thinking back and remembering them and many others on those and other special occasions. These anniversaries give us an opportunity to go back and revisit those difficult experiences, but also to reflect on the significance of those relationships. So the following is a significant grief principle. Grief comes and goes. Grief doesn't come all at once. Some people think that grief should be like a cold or a sore throat. When you get sick with a cold, you usually feel miserable for a couple of days, but then you gradually begin to feel better, and a week or so later, you're over it. But grief doesn't work like that. In fact, at first, many people feel numb, and others can confuse that numbness with strength. They expect it from there. You will just get better and better until a few months down the road, you're over it. But in fact, you may feel like you're getting worse. Grief is more like a roller coaster. One day you're up, and the next day you're down. You'll feel fine for a while, and then suddenly you find yourself plunged into grief again. I remember taking my boys to the beach one summer. We would stand on the edge of the water, watching a huge wave coming towards us. 1 minute we'd be standing on solid ground. The next we'd be overwhelmed by a wave that would knock us off balance. Then that wave would recede and we'd be on solid ground again. Then another wave would come in, and again we'd be off balance, struggling to catch our breath. Grief comes in waves. One day you think you're doing well, feet firmly planted, and the next you're overwhelmed by a wave of grief that knocks you off balance, leaves you floundering and gasping for air. The problem is that people who have what I call a sore throat mentality towards grief see you on a good day when you're feeling a bit more stable, and they say how well you're doing, and they expect that you'll continue to make progress. But when they see you next week and you're having a bad day or you're experiencing a grief attack, they might say, well, gee, what's wrong with you? You were doing so well last week. They don't understand that grief comes and goes. These experiences are often called grief attacks. I have another word for it. I call it a tug. T-U-G, because it is a temporary upsurge in grief. What causes these grief attacks or tugs? The reality is that anything that reminds us of our loved one has the potential to trigger a grief attack. So many things remind us of that person and of our loss. Special days throughout the year, such as birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas.
Mom's birthday would have been last week. I was dreading the day. Although, to be honest, when it finally arrived, the anticipation was worse than the reality. I was thinking it was going to be such a sad day. But then I began to think about birthdays in the past. Things she did for my birthday, as well as the special things I would do for her. I think birthdays are a celebration of life, are they not? So I thought, what should I do? And I did some of the things we might have done if she had still been here. It worked out great. It was as though I could actually feel her presence and her pleasure.
For some people, it's a time of the day, or the day in the month that the person died. It can be a familiar place like a park, or a favorite restaurant, or visiting a holiday place for the first time. It can be smells like someone's aftershave or a perfume, coffee brewing or bread baking, or mothballs in the pockets of a coat. It can be a song on the radio, or maybe at a wedding reception, the couple dances to a tune that catches you by surprise and the memories flood back. Anything and everything that reminds us of the person has the potential to trigger what some people call a grief attack or a tug. So what can we do? The first thing we have to do is to be willing to be gentle and forgiving of ourselves at such sensitive times. You're going to have difficult days. There are going to be times when you miss the person. There will be situations that just suddenly remind you of the person and you find yourself missing them all over again. Sometimes it'll just happen and there doesn't seem to be any explanation or reason for it. You are on a roller coaster. The good news is that the dips will be fewer and less severe as time goes on, but these things will continue. Did I tell you that my dad died in 1971 and I still think about him every Easter Sunday? And why not? However, while recognizing that these times will surely come, and that's okay, we still have to decide what we can do about it. We have a choice to let grief control us or to try to control the grief. A proactive approach is good because it gives us power in a situation where we might otherwise feel helpless. A proactive approach means, how can I take charge? What can I do? Remember, if we understand the why, the how takes care of itself. So what is this experience saying to us? Obviously that we are missing the person on this day or in this situation or at that moment, and also that we don't like it. I believe that grieving well means to take control of our grief. So what can we do? For example, birthdays are a celebration of life. So why not do something to commemorate the fact that your loved one lived? I agree that you may not want it to be a riotous time of merriment, but can you do something meaningful? And maybe you can think of meaningful ways on all of those special occasions throughout the year of not only commemorating the fact that someone has died, but celebrating the fact that this person has lived. One of the gifts of grief is a reminder to live every day as if it were our last. So what would your loved one want you to do on that day or on that occasion? Maybe that will help you to decide what might be appropriate.